Welcome, listener. I think this episode is probably notable for how it made me feel for the first 10 minutes, which was incredibly emotional to the point where I couldn't say anything really. It was just so touching. We were speaking to a lovely lady called Jenny Rayner, who has set up the Lucy Rayner Foundation in memory of her daughter. Jenny, Rich, talk to us about her.
Yeah, so Jenny's doing some impressive and inspiring things in the world of mental health, inspired by tragedy in her own life that she will tell you about in the episode. And she has set up this foundation to deal with a lot of the sort of the inadequacies of the current mental health service that we speak about quite a lot on this podcast. And we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about suicide. So sort of trigger warnings there if that's something you need, or we are going to be speaking about the very serious matter of suicide and grief and losing family members, and how to spot the signs of someone who's in a vulnerable position, how to speak to them, how to get them the help they need.
Yeah. And I think Jenny speaks with such authenticity and knowledge. I mean, this event happened to her in 2012. And since then, you cannot imagine what she has done. So there's hope as well as the despair.
Listener, do you love what you're hearing? If so, drop us a like, share your favorite episode with friends, and help us grow by leaving a review wherever you get your podcasts. Your support means the world to us and helps keep the conversation going. So tune in, follow, like, and review today. Jenny, welcome to the pod. Can you tell us what is the story behind why you started a foundation to help prevent suicide?
Okay, so I'm Jenny Rayner. I have got 3 children, married, and my middle daughter, Lucy, always struggled with her mental health from like a really young age. And we just assumed that's how she was. And so she grew up having mood swings, and we thought were just tantrums, but she had problems regulating her emotions. So back in 2012, she worked for a company called PSA Finance, Peugeot, and they did financing for cars. And she was their it girl. She was on all of their promotional materials as their customer service frontline person. They promoted her, and then within a week, the whole company relocated to Coventry and made her redundant. So at the same time, she'd bought herself a new car. Therefore, she was thinking, how am I going to pay for my car? And she also split up with her boyfriend the night before. And that was done all on social media. And that night, I just got a phone call saying that is Lucy okay, from one of her friends, that she'd broken up with her boyfriend. And so I checked in on her, and I just said, have you split up with your boyfriend? She'd been seeing him for about a year and a bit. And she said, yeah, we've broken up. And it was done on Facebook. So her status was single. And so everybody was starting to text her and saying, are you and your partner, have you split up? And I think that again put a lot of pressure on her. The following day, we were supposed to be going to my other daughter who was at uni. She just finished her first year, sat her exams, and we were really excited. We were going to take her out for dinner to say congratulations. But we also knew that Lucy had been crying all night. And we kind of said to her, come out with us, just to get away from the house. And she was like, no, I just want to be on my own. Just leave me. I'll be okay. And we just thought, okay, well, she's gone through a breakup. Maybe we'll just leave her to kind of like have some time to herself. And then when we get back, we'll take her out for dinner. And so we set off, and it was like an hour and a half drive to where we were going to in London. And we got to my daughter's university. we kind of like all congratulating her, and she was asking about Lucy, and we just said that she'd just broken up with her boyfriend. She's a bit down. Yeah, but when we come back, we'll cheer her up. So we all went out for dinner. We sat down, we ordered, and we just got a phone call. And the phone call was like, "Are all your girls with you?" And my husband was like, "No." Well, they found a young girl at the back of our house, and our house backs onto some woodlands where the public they walk their dogs, and they meander around, just walking through the park. And we said, no, they found a young girl. She was found by a dog walker, and she'd hung herself at the back of our house. And do we need to come back because the young girl was mixed race? Obviously, my husband is Caucasian and I'm ethnic Black. And we just thought, oh my God. My husband was like, get up, let's go. And I was like, no, that's not Lucy. It's not her. She would never do that to us. She'd never spoken about, wanting to take her life. So I don't think it's her, but my husband was adamant, Jen, we got to go. We've got to go. She was in a state the night before, so it could be her. And I was in utter denial. I was like, even on the way back, my husband was driving like a mad person just to get home with my other two girls in the back. And they were phoning everybody that lived near us to go and check on Lucy. And they were coming back and saying that her car was there. So she was in the house. And Stuart was like, no, my husband was like, no, we're going back. We've got to go back and find out what's gone on. I think it's her. So when we got back to our road, there was like police cars, ambulance. There was like, it was all cordoned off, like in a crime scene. And I was just in total shock at what we arrived to. My husband was like really frantic, and he had said, we think it's your daughter. And it was the most awful shock that we could have like arrived to. My husband was angry. We wanted to get into the house. They wouldn't let us get in the house because that had now become something of like a crime scene, because they needed to find out what actually happened. So we couldn't go in. We couldn't see. Then one of the policemen came up to us and said, your daughter's been taken to East Surrey Hospital. There is a heartbeat and you need to get down there. So we all got into the police car and we rushed down to East Surrey Hospital, where we sat in the family's room while they were working on my daughter. And we just sat and prayed so hard that she'd be okay. And then after about 45 minutes, the doctor came in and just basically said, we're really sorry. Every time they stopped CPR, her heart failed, and there was nothing that they could do to sustain her life. That was it for us. Our whole world just changed really from that moment. It was horrendous. It took a long time for us to come back from it. And it was done so publicly. It was where everybody was walking. So the newspaper got wind of it and they were like on our tails and were on the front page of the Surrey Mirror. It was really awful time. Really bad time. Yeah.
Good. My God. Yeah, it's such a awful story, Jenny. I feel very emotional just hearing it, and I can't imagine how emotional it must be retelling it.
The ripple effect of something like that, it not only affects immediate family, but it affected Lucy's closest friends. And she belonged to like a big group of girls, about 10 of them, and none of them knew that she was struggling either. So when the news came out that she had passed, the fallout for them was horrendous as well. A lot of them came to drink and had a like really bad depression that we had to support them with. So, when Lucy passed, actually, when looking back, she had gone to her GP like 2 weeks before, and she had told them that she was really struggling with her mental health. And they just changed her contraceptive pill. They said it was hormonal. Now, we knew it wasn't. When she came back and said, I've just got new contraceptive pills, We knew it was more than just her hormones. We knew she struggled to regulate her emotions. There is bipolar in my husband's side of the family. There's depression on my side of the family. So, it could have been something that was hereditary. So we knew something wasn't right. We did know, but we just didn't know how to support her. We didn't have enough information about mental health to support her in the right way. So when she'd gone to the GP and they changed her contraceptive, we just thought maybe that's what it was. So when she passed, we did a memorial for her and we raised £15,000. And we took that money to the GP surgery and we kind of said, look, we've raised some money. Here's £15,000. Can we please have like a counsellor or even like a psychiatric nurse to be based at our surgery? And they said that we've already got that. And I was like, well, hang on a second then. Why didn't you refer my daughter when she told you she was struggling with her mental health? And they said that she didn't present at someone that looked depressed. So I was like, well, hang on a second. What does depression look like? Got really angry. And I said, depression doesn't have a gender. Depression doesn't have a social standing. It doesn't have a colour. It doesn't have an appearance. Somebody can mask. And some people, like Lucy, mask really well. Lucy was the life and soul of a party. All her friends came to her with their problems. She was very kind. She always helped people that was in trouble. We had letters coming through our door saying how Lucy had supported an elderly person because he'd fallen in the street. She'd taken him back to his house. She'd given him a cup of tea, phoned his daughter to come to the house. She was always doing acts of kindness for people. That's not what depression is. Depression is something that's inside you. It's something that you can't share readily. It's a feeling. It's an emotion. It's mental ill health. You can't physically see that in a person unless they actually tell you. So we kind of thought, oh my God, they couldn't see it. And these are people that are supposed to be trained to be able to pick up these things. So we kind of thought, well, actually, how many other young people slip through that net who present to a GP and say, I'm really struggling with either exams or whatever it is that they come to the GP with for their depression or anxiety or low mood. When they go to the GP and the GP says, well, it's a hormonal thing. How many young people slip through that net and don't get seen and don't get heard and walk away thinking, no one can help me. The GP can't. Who can help me? And in that moment, us as a family thought, oh my God, I don't want that to happen to another young person. So a year to the day of Lucy's passing, we started our charity in her name. And now we see something like last year we saw 866 young people and put them through our counselling service. And we have 50 counsellors with no waiting list.
Wow.
And we're really, really pleased to say that.
Just so we don't miss it. What is the name of the foundation?
It's the Lucy Rayner Foundation.
And we will be sure to link in that in show notes. But yeah, what you share there, Jenny, is so true. Very similar. My experience, I had depression for, 14, 15 years, a couple of suicide attempts from myself. And when I really, did my first suicide attempt, the response was, I can't believe, this happened. I had no idea. So many people just thought, I was just a bit down or, I'm just a bit low in energy. I was very good at masking it, just like you kind of have to be to get along in society. And I did reach out for help a couple of times and people were just sort of like, yeah, okay, have you tried, just really sort of good meaning advice, but not really what I meant. Like for me to just to speak like I'm thinking about committing suicide was just like I kind of whispered it almost, but
Absolutely.
it was a huge like effort to say that to someone. And then when nothing really happened, I was like, well, if I've made all this effort to share it with, I shared it with a couple of people and then nothing had happened.
It
I was
happened.
like, well, there's no hope for me, so I may as well just give up. So, and I am a sort of a trained mental health practitioner as well in some regards, PhD in psychology and study psychotherapy. The training to become a psychotherapist is incredibly rigorous. It is really hard. Most people don't make it. In terms of like 50% of the people on my course from the first year dropped out because to become a psychotherapist is really tough. And that just shows you like, even these people who have really tough training, like high academic standards at university, they still can't spot someone who is on the verge of suicide. It just really highlights how tricky mental health is. And Andy, you want to
No, I
share
was just
something?
going to say, so just so I'm completely clear on the Lucy Rayner Foundation, this is anyone of up to, is it 18 who's feeling?
So no, it's from 14 years of age to 39 years of age. And we have to have obviously a category, otherwise we'll just run out of money.
Of course.
We have like an age range, but we kind of feel that 14 to 39 is where life really happens, where the transitioning periods happen. So you going through puberty, you have exams, you go to university, you have exams, you get a job, you get into relationships, you have a family, you get married, you buy a house, you have kids, and so much happens in that time frame that people really struggle with their mental health because some people just can't deal with change. And when a lot of change happens, it puts a lot of stress on you. So we kind of want to be there to support people that when they're going through those big changes.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, change. I mean, at age 14 was when my depression started as well. So I'm glad to hear you're helping people that young. But Jenny, I just want to go back to your experience. So you mentioned you were numb there. Your husband was angry. What else was going on for you?
Gosh, for me, when you lose somebody by suicide, the emotions that you feel are so complex that it's really hard to truly say that there's a linear way that you have to grieve for somebody that you lose. So for me, I can only speak about me. For me, it was denial to begin with. I'm quite a spiritual person, so I do believe that we go to somewhere else when we pass. I was first in denial, then I just wanted to be in Lucy's space. Although I wanted to be in her space, I couldn't bear to hear her voice. I didn't want to see any videos of her because the pain was just too much. And the pain is a physical pain. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't do anything really. And the only way that I could get through the day was just moment by moment. And I had to find something to focus on. And the focus that I had was first her funeral. My husband wasn't any use to me because he just disintegrated. He was really, really emotional and just couldn't articulate anything. He spent a lot of time in his room, not wanting to speak to anybody, just barely getting through. He had to go on antidepressants. For me, I just got focused. What I call now is the doing phase. The doing phase is to find anything and everything that I could do to take my mind off the subject or my feelings. So I would go out for walks. I would go and sit in the cinema, sometimes on my own, just to get away from reality and watch lots of Marvel films were my thing, just to be in a different thought pattern, to be in a fantasy land, to not feel what I'm feeling. I focused on her funeral, choosing songs and what I think she wanted with the girls. I also started a project because I knew I wasn't going to go back to my old job. I was trying to look at things that I could do to kind of be more present at home with the rest of my family. I had a massive fear about losing my other children as well, because I know when you lose someone by suicide, the actual reality of losing someone by suicide is real. So I didn't want anything else to happen to anyone else in my family. So I had an anxiety around that. So I kept doing things for them, making sure they were all right, making sure my husband was all right. So I did a lot of doing. And then once Lucy's funeral had gone, I focused on starting the charity and learning a lot more about mental health, because for me, I didn't know enough. I wasn't able to spot the signs. I felt so much guilt around what if I had picked it up earlier? And there was a lot of what ifs and things that I could have done, the things I should have done. And I beat myself up about that I wasn't a good mum. And if I knew my daughter enough, then I would have known. And I didn't know. She was really good at masking. So yeah, there was a lot of guilt around that. I had to then look at really being kind to myself, because kindness kind of softened the blow of my guilt. So I had a mantra that was, just be kind to yourself. Every time I had a random thought, or I was being angry at myself or being angry at someone else for not understanding my grief, because, once you have the funeral, your friends and family rally around you, sort of like in the early days. But once the funeral is done, they all start falling away, but you're still left with that emptiness, that loss, that heartache. And people just seem to feel that you should be over it. But a death by suicide takes ages to even come to terms with. And it's not a getting over something, it's a getting through it. And that getting through takes years, absolute years. And you never actually lose that. I kind of liken it to, like when you're on a trek and you've got this mountain that's ahead of you, and you're carrying like a really massive backpack that is heavy, and you're climbing up this hill, and this backpack is so heavy that it's like almost dragging you down the hill, but you're taking one step at a time. Eventually, you build muscle, you build the strength to carry the backpack. And so although the weight is the same, you have the ability to carry it stronger. You become more resilient to it. And so it's still there, but you just carry it better.
And if you look back at that grieving period, I mean, accepting that you probably never stop grieving, are there any tips that you would give? I mean, you mentioned that you kind of threw yourselves into different spaces, and you went to see the Marvel films, and then you just went into projects. Any other advice you would give? And being kind to yourself seems like the most important for you, but any other tips that you would give, perhaps?
So the other tips that I would say is not to push away your emotions. Some people will want to shut it down and not want to feel what's coming up. I'm saying you need to feel everything. Don't push things away, because it will come back, and it will come back with a vengeance. So you have to allow your feelings to arise, and you have to acknowledge those feelings. Yes, today I'm feeling really angry. And allow that anger to come through. If it means screaming at the top of your voice, go to the top of a hill and scream. If you're feeling really sad and tearful, have a cry. And if you find that you want to cry and you can't bring that up, maybe sit in front of a tearful film or listen to songs that will allow you to cry. These are things you have to help yourself with, because it is really, really hard. It is really hard. So don't push your feelings down. Allow them to come forward, because that's the only way you will truly get through the pain of this and come out the other side.
I often recommend that same strategy, like watch a sad film. And because I think for some people, certainly people who've learned to suppress their emotions, it can be like a relearning period of like, where you stop, whatever you internalized as a child, boys don't cry, whatever, strong people don't show emotion. There is a relearning period there. And I have used that technique many times. It's almost like I can cry for someone else, like in a sad
you can't
movie.
cry for yourself.
But then once that door's opened, then I can cry for myself.
Absolutely.
And then you said you thought a lot about what you could have done differently. I imagine there was a lot of sort of rumination, and you said you're beating yourself up. Were there any conclusions you came to of things you could have done different that you might want to share with other parents?
So Lucy left a note, and I know that for some, they don't get the note, they don't get the final thoughts of that person that has passed. But we luckily, she left us a note on her laptop. And in that note, she exonerated every single one of us. She just said, this is not about you. This is about me. This is about how I'm feeling, and that this life is too hard. And she was really sensitive to everything. This life was too hard for her, and she just wanted out. And that we were not to blame ourselves for her. She's saying that it's the kindest thing. And she put it like, I just want to go home. I want to return. And so, I felt, for me, although I felt sad for her, I didn't take too much of the blame. After a while, when you go around with, I could have done, I should have done, what ifs, that will go on for a while, but you do finally get to a place where you realize, you exhaust yourself with all of that, and you realize there was nothing you could have done. There wasn't. The decision was hers, and it was hers alone. Nothing that I could have said, nothing that I would have done, no ifs or buts would have changed her decision. It was her decision, and her decision alone. And even if I had saved her once someone has tried to take their life, the likelihood of it happening again is going to happen. And the decision to stay is down to them. They have to have that will to stay. And Lucy didn't.
Mm.
And I've come to peace with that. I miss her dearly every day, but I've come to peace with that now.
Yeah, it's a painful realization that even as a parent, you can't control anyone as much as you'd like to.
She was an adult, and an adult makes their own decisions. And I keep looking back and I keep thinking, I wish she was 3 again. So I could tell her what to do and keep her safe. But once they're adults, you can't.
Just want to talk about the issues of the mental health. What did you see that made you want to start up a foundation?
So the first thing was the attitude of the doctors. She didn't present as someone that was depressed. That attitude in itself angered me. You can't just look at someone and assume that they're okay when they're telling you they're not. She wasn't heard. She wasn't seen. And they didn't treat her appropriately. They misdiagnosed her. They thought it was pneumonia, and it wasn't. It was far more than that. And they weren't prepared to delve deeper. And I know doctors have a rough deal, and they have very little time to see a person. But when someone's saying, I need help, I need support, I'm feeling low, what's the harm in referring them to a talk-in therapy? So Lucy needed to talk to somebody and share how she was feeling, and that wasn't on offer. So that's what we wanted to do. Initially, we wanted to offer that service to any young person that was struggling with their mental health. And at 14, they can self-refer. They do not need an adult for them to refer themselves. And it also means that their parents can refer on their behalf with their consent. It also means that GP can refer to us as well on their behalf. So anybody who is looking after a young person, 14 and above, can self-refer to us. And that's what we thought we wanted to do. We wanted to offer that service to anybody, any young person in Surrey who was struggling with their mental health, and not to have a waiting list, because it takes a lot. Like you said, it takes a lot for someone to even say, I'm struggling, that I'm having suicidal thoughts. And so when they come to their GP, it takes a lot of courage for somebody who is really, truly depressed to say these words to a GP. So we want to make sure that when they come to us, they're seen very quickly. We don't have a waiting list, which means that we are reactive. So they can be seen straight away, because I know personally of people who have gone to their GP and they have told them there is a waiting list of up to 6 months. And then that young person has said, can no one help me? And within days of that appointment have ended up taking their life. Because once you reach the state of hopelessness, there's no hope. That's when the reality of someone ending their life becomes real.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, it reminds me of that statistic from the Journal of American Medicine. A study showed that the third biggest cause of death in the US was iatrogenic illness, i.e. medical malpractice, which includes misdiagnosis that perhaps your daughter would go under there. And, the medical system in America is, as a lot where I'm based, is, the subject of a lot of sort of conspiracy theories and things like that. But when you find out the third leading cause of death in a country is the medical system, it really raises a lot of eyebrows. And it makes me quite angry, because the medical system has such a dominance and a little bit of an arrogance, like we know best. I'm a doctor. You're not a doctor. Your problems are hormonal, or it's just in your head, and then it leads to tragedies like this. So,
is there
go on, Andy.
a physical building for the Lucy Rayner Foundation, or is some of it online?
No, it's online. We do have a physical headquarters where we do training, and we have our offices, so people can come and see us. Absolutely, we have an open door policy, and we have some counselling rooms in there as well, where our counsellors can use the service there.
And there's kind of a consistency of care there, is there? So the first counsellor you see will be the person to take you through your...
So actually, when we get the referral through, everything is done the referral form is done online. Otherwise, we'll just be inundated. So everything is done online. They fill the referral form in, and then it goes to our counselling team. So we have a lead counsellor who will go through all of the referrals, and then we have assessors. So the referrals form will be distributed to the assessors. The assessors will then, within 48 hours, call the young person, and then they will get as much information to why they need the service. And then once they know, then they will allocate the counsellor. The counsellor will then call them, and then between them, they will book their appointments. And they have 6 appointments with one of the counsellors. And then it's up to the counsellor's discretion to whether or not they have more.
And Jenny, how long ago did your daughter pass, and how old was she, if you don't mind me asking, when she passed?
So Lucy passed on the 5th of May 2012. So that is 12 years ago. And she was 22 at the time.
22. Yeah, so I was thinking about the state of young people's mental health, and I guess your daughter is not part of the Gen Z generation that are so affected by, iPhones and social media and things like that. But, running a foundation, I'm always really interested. Do you have any insight as to why mental health is getting so much worse, and in particular, so much worse in the younger generations?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think I can only tell you my beliefs. For me, it's a melting pot. It's a mixture of social media. It's a mixture of internet. It's a mixture of what they hear on TV, the economic climate, the wanting of information. And I think there's too much information that young people can access. And I don't think they fully understand what they're taking in. I know that young people, when they have like an ailment, they will Google it, and then they'll see the worst case scenario and think that they're dying. So they can catastrophize stuff. And because of how the brain works for young people, there are certain ages when they're in adolescent where the brain will over dramatize things, and things can seem 10 times bigger than they actually are. So it is a mixture of hormones, about the brain developing, about society, social media, internet, the need for perfection, looking at other people on social media who they want to aspire to, who aren't necessarily the best role models. So it's a mixture of everything that really plays on young people's minds. And we are having children as young as 6 self-harming with eating disorders and massive social anxiety and separation anxiety. And I think that's off of the back of the pandemic. And that has something to play with it as well.
And would you say there's still a stigma surrounding mental health, or have we made good strides in that space?
No, there's still a stigma. There's still a stigma around mental health. I think people are still frightened to say how they're feeling or to even tell somebody that they're feeling suicidal because of the stigma. I think we've got better at it. I think we've got better at talking about it and around it. But I think it still affects people in actually saying that I'm feeling suicidal or I feel anxious or I am depressed. I think there's still a lot of masking that is going on.
So have you kind of come up against challenges for your foundation? It sounds like you've done amazingly well, but has there been any kind of, I don't know, difficulties in advocating mental health care?
The difficulties that we really have is the amount of people that want to access our service to the amount of funding that we have. So if we don't want to get to a stage where we have a waiting list. So we have to constantly fundraise. And for example, this year, we've done it in excess of 30 fundraising events just to keep the money coming in. See, I've got hiccups. The money coming in. So that is always a challenge. And we're not a really big team, which means that all of the staff are stretched to maximum capacity. So we're always mindful about our own mental health and our own well-being, because we can have burnout very quickly. Because if you can imagine the services that we're providing, and I've only talked to you about the counselling service, but we also have support services for men, support services for women. We run a suicide bereavement service, and we run a robust schools program where we go into schools and we train up teachers, we train up colleges and universities and lecturers. We also do workshops for the students, and we go in as early as primary age, 5, 6, 7-year-olds. So, for us, we do quite a lot of proactive work and prevention work, because we feel that if we can get children young enough to be able to access their feelings and to understand what those feelings are for them, and to let them come to the surface instead of burying it, then we can get them earlier and they can be much more resilient in understanding and finding the tools that they need to support themselves. Because I feel that we've lost the resilience during the pandemic stages in the Gen Z age and the Generation Alpha.
Yeah, absolutely. I like the name you've got there, robustness, because I think, if you go into schools and be like, we're going to teach you, non-anxiety, how not to be depressed, you're just creating people about, am I depressed? Do I have anxiety? Do I have a problem? But if you're teaching robustness, that's, sort of a positive direction. I did see in your FAQs a comment on no-shows, and this is something that sort of bothers me. It's a real challenge I have, is like when you're dealing with people who are really struggling and you're showing up for them and giving them your time, and then they, cancel at the last minute, don't show up. How do you deal with that frustration of someone who's just not willing to help themselves?
Yeah, that is a massive frustration for us, as well as it being a financial impact for us. It is really frustrating when our counsellors phone, email, text somebody before their appointments and they still don't turn up. And, we have to have rules in place where if somebody doesn't show up twice, then we have to take them off the books, because obviously there are going to be other people that need that service. So we have to kind of like say to them, if you don't turn up for your next one, then we're going to have to take you off, which is unfortunate because they engage with us because they're struggling with their mental health. But if they're not showing up, how are we supposed to support them? How are we supposed to help them?
I think it is one of the hardest things in life is this, to just let someone go. You know, as you said, you know, burnout is really a real thing in mental health services. I think psychotherapists have one of the highest suicide rates themselves of any profession because it is such a taxing thing. And yeah, when you really want to help someone, you know, a family member, and they won't help themselves, just having to just let go and just be like, well, you know, I've done all I can is a brutal thing. And you know, maybe it's quite, some people might think it's cruel, but I think sometimes feel, you know, your own sanity, you have to just accept that some people are beyond your help. And I don't want to use the word lost cause, but that's the one that's popping into my head, and it's really sad.
But there's a lot of factors to that as well. You have parents who fill in the referral form for that young person, and they haven't really had the consent of the young person. And so they'll book the appointment for that person, and the person won't show up. And then the mum will call us and say, well, did so-and-so make their appointment? And we were like, no, they didn't show. And then she'll go back and say, well, can we do it again next week? But actually, when we contact the young person and say, why did you not? They will say, well, my mum booked it. I didn't agree to that. So some of it is because the young person hasn't actually agreed to the counselling sessions. The parents want them to have it. So that's why we have to say to the parents, is there consent from your young person?
I had a question, Jenny, around, I suppose, like wider communities and families. How do they better support people with, you know, struggling with mental health? Maybe how do they stay vigilant and alive to people who are struggling, perhaps in the community?
Yeah. So it's really difficult because when you have a young person that is struggling with their mental health within the family setting, it can cause a lot of disharmony and atmosphere within the household. And it can lead to parents also having mental health issues themselves because they're constantly walking on eggshells, constantly trying to gauge how their young person is feeling. What mood are they going to wake up in this morning? Are they going to be in a good mood, or are they going to be in an aggy mood where they're not going to listen to anything that you have to say? Are they going to be aggressive towards you? So it's very difficult sometimes for parents and siblings to be in a household with somebody who's struggling with their mental health. What I say to families is to build yourself up. Get the support around you as well so that your mental health is in a good place to support your young person. Get yourself clued up about mental health signs and symptoms. Put yourself on a mental health first aid course. Make sure you understand the signs and symptoms of what that looks like so that you can catch it quickly enough. So if you have for example, if you have a young person that is thinking of suicide, there are certain questions that you can ask to find out whether or not they are. And one of them is to ask that person directly, are you suicidal? We sometimes think that if you ask that question, then that person will go and do it. But actually, that is not the case. Somebody who is suicidal and is thinking of ending their life want to tell someone. The whole point of it being secretive weighs heavy on them. And they think that if I say it, I'm going to really upset somebody. So that they kind of keep it close to the chest. But if someone outrightly says, are you suicidal? It's almost like a relief for them to say, yes, I am. And then the question would be, have you got a plan? And if they say no, then you know you need to get your young person some help to the GP or to some counselling. If that person says, yes, I do, I have a plan. Then you say, well, what's the plan? And they will tell you. Then you know they got a plan. They know how they're going to do it. We now need to take evasive action and get them to either A&E or to the GP for a referral to psychiatrist, because that is serious.
Yeah, those questions
And that
are
saves
vital.
lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's interesting you say how a child's mental health can affect a parent's mental health. I know there's a lot of research about how a parent's mental health affects a child. You know, there's the adverse childhood events. You know, it's like one of the best predictors of addiction in children when they're adults. And one of them, of those predictors, is, did one of your parents have mental health issues? But I wonder if it's a linear relationship there. It's food for thought.
Honestly, it's so complex because, you know, you have parents who are highly anxious and they teach their children to be anxious children, you know, and then anxious children become anxious adults. And so that gets passed down. So, you know, I know a young person who grandfather took their life and then the father took their life and they've tried taking their life. So it's 3 generations of learnt behaviour.
Yeah, there's this kind of contagion about it, isn't there? The same with self-harm, I believe.
But it's about education and it's about understanding about what does that look like? What do I need to break patterns? What do I need to change a dynamic? So it's about learning about yourself. And I think that is the key. It's about learning about yourself, learning about your uniqueness and what is it that I need to support my physical and my mental health. What tools do I need? Really important.
Incredible advice. Thank you so much, Jenny. Yeah, I feel like you've been speaking to me like directly, heart to heart for this entire time. It's been amazing. Could you talk a bit more about any future goals or upcoming projects for the foundation?
Yeah, I can. So I have a vision that we can build a centre, and it's a wellbeing centre which bridges the gap from when a person goes to their GP and when there is a massive waiting list to getting seen by a professional. And this wellbeing centre will have everything in it to look at that person holistically, both physically and mentally, and a place where they can try different techniques to build their own toolkit. And that's what I want. I want a person to come to us in the Wellbeing Centre and either try trauma therapy, EMDR, CBT, hypnotherapy, normal clinical stuff, see a GP, speak to a psychiatrist, mental health nurse, do a bit of meditation, do yoga if they want it, you know, everything that they can, art therapy, music therapy, whatever it is that will enable them to find the resources within themselves. So when they're having a low mood, they can pull on things. I tried that and that worked for me. Let me do that again. So to have like a whole toolkit that they can pull on. If this isn't working, I can try this. If this isn't working, I can try this because I know I've tried it and it has worked for me. Because not one cap fits all. We're so different, so diverse.
Yeah, absolutely. I think thinking about the misdiagnosis of Lucy, I expect there probably are people who just have depression because of the medication they're on, because of their contraceptive pill. And it's just, there's so many factors, so many variables. And yeah, it's such a difficult thing. But the fact that you're trying to address all those different causes of mental illness, I think is the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
And then you have some events. I'm going to be a part of one of your events, Jenny. I'm excited about that. Can you tell our listeners a bit more about that?
So medication in mental health began about 4 or 5 years ago. So it started off, we did like an event called Can Anyone Hear Me? And Can Anyone Hear Me was a live event in London where we invited young people to talk about their mental health journey. And what we did, we invited clinicians, counsellors, therapists, school teachers, Senko teachers, anyone that dealt with young people who struggle with their mental health in whatever setting that would be, to come and listen to their experiences and to really just have a conversation around what can we do better for these young people. And that for me was so inspiring. People walked away and started things on their own, projects that are now doing so well from that platform by just listening to young people's inspirational stories. Somebody who'd been in a facility for eating disorder, what they wished the people had done to support them, how they could have done better. Somebody who was in a facility for end of life, what they wish somebody would have done for them, for their parent who was struggling, a carer, what they wished somebody would do to help them support a parent or a child who was, struggling with their mental health. All different scenarios that we could put in front of people so they could hear firsthand people's experiences, young people's experiences of life, and to make a change and to have a conversation. And for me, that was great. And then we kind of then had people talking about being in mental health institutes and about how they were treated. And then we thought, okay, let's do a new series around medication in mental health and how that affects the body and what we can do. So then we had people with lived experience, and this wasn't just for young people, it was for everybody, because GPs regularly give out medication and nobody ever questions, is that the right medication for me? I don't have a diagnosis, so why are you giving me this medication? Some people have been on medication for years, 10 years plus, and I've never questioned, why have I never had a review of my meds? Why am I still on the same dosage? Or why am I given more because my body's got used to the dose that I'm on? Why have you never reviewed that? And so I wanted to give people just an inkling into, you have the right to ask questions about what you're putting in your body. Do you know what the contraindications are for the meds that you are on? And people didn't know. And did you know that some medications make you feel suicidal when you change meds? And they didn't know. So ask more questions around your mental health. So these are the things that we wanted to do. And so we then did different variations of that. And this year, we're doing it on men's mental health. We want to look particularly around testosterone because we know that low testosterone can bring on poor mental health. And it has a knock-on effect on everything else. Sleep, how you feel about yourself, your motivation, your sex drive, everything. So we wanted to bring that to the forefront because, Ryan Parr, who did something for our men's group, talked about men's mental health, spoke about testosterone, and the things that he was saying resonated with our men. And off the back of it, they all went and got their testosterone tested, and a few of them had low testosterone. And off the back of it, are doing really well now. How many other men don't know this information, that testosterone can play a massive part in men's hormones and mental health and physical health? It's a conversation to be had.
Yeah, absolutely. We actually had Ryan Park on here, and he was great in terms of the revelations he gave and surrounding testosterone. And that
Why
event
don't
sounds...
GPs tell you this information? Why don't they test you for it? as a regular thing. I don't get it.
I'm really excited by your event as well about medication, because my mum, when she was struggling with depression, was on lithium for about 20 years and ended up almost having total kidney failure to the point where she had to come off it. And then when she had another serious bout of depression, the meds didn't seem to be doing anything, were rarely reviewed, such erratic behavior. And you just sort of thought that there's got to be something in this, because it's not, medication was doing nothing as far as I'm concerned. So, yeah.
Well, had got used to it.
Yeah. No, well, those events sound absolutely amazing and will save lives. So,
yes,
good luck to you.
And they're November 17th, is that the date?
No, it's the 21st of November.
21st of November. Sorry, I'll be there on both days. No, I'll be there on the 21st.
Thanks so much for giving us your time today, Jenny, and for talking so openly.
Yeah.
Really, really appreciate it. And I couldn't speak for the first 10 minutes, but that was just because it was so touching. I was, really moved by what you were saying.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
And thank you for inviting me on your podcast.
Well, it's great to have you. Welcome back, listener. We hope you enjoyed that interview with Jenny. We hope you were as touched and moved and hopefully inspired and given some hope for the future, given what people like Jenny are doing, taking action.
Yeah, seriously inspiring lady, and has been recognised for it. So maybe we should end on the positive of her accolades, Rich, if you want to rattle through them.
Yeah, well, we just took these from her website, but she has received the British Citizens Award for Service to the Community, Regional Finalist for Pride of Britain Award, British Citizens Award Certificate of Merit, and the Mayor's Annual Volunteers Award. So it's great to see that she is being recognised, because she is having a big impact. I think she's mentioned thousands of families that have been supported by this foundation, and long may it continue. And I believe they do accept donations. They do look for support. So go check out the Lucy Rayner Foundation if you need support for your mental health and you're in the Surrey area, or if you want to provide some support. I'm sure they would be most grateful for that.
I absolutely loved Jenny's vision of the future as well, with all of that under one roof, the different therapy types and the different ways in which you can improve your mental health all under one roof. That sounds like such an amazing thing, and I'm sure she'll do it. And there's many more accolades to come, no doubt.
No doubt. All right. Well, thank you, Andy. Thank you to Jenny, and thank you, listener. We find us at Andy Esam,
at richardlblake.com, at
The Breath Geek on Instagram. Yes. All right. Well, thank you, listener. We hope you enjoyed the episode, and we will see you next time.
Take care.
Bye-bye.